Dr. Harris. Well, and really so pleased through the help of Macy's, actually. We're so pleased that this year we have 45 books in the multicultural collection, and we've been putting together a multicultural collection since 2007. Macy's has helped us with that. These are actually the books as you see them go through. One of them, the I Love Saturdays y Domingos, my own students who are teaching have told me in their ESL classes that when they use the books and they start with I Love Saturdays y Domingos, their own children perk up because they recognize Sunday. This year, in addition to the 45 books, we have teaching materials for parents, for community-based organizations, and for educators. So if you're any of those three, those will be added to the RIF website, and they're totally free. They're all in PDF files, so you can download them. They're beautiful. They've been designed, and they actually follow the Common Core standards if you're a teacher and you need that. Well, Joe, speaking of censorship, so your book is one of those that's been taken off the shelves in the Arizona schools. Multicultural, the whole topic is a very hot one right this minute. How do we answer people who say that multicultural literature is inferior, that it takes the place of the Western canon of the literature from Greece and from Rome and from England? What do we say to critics like that?
Guitar. Kita means listen in the Abenaki language. The Creator gave us, every one of us, 2 ears and only 1 mouth. We're supposed to listen twice as much as we talk. And we're supposed to remember, because those ears are on either side of our head, we can always hear at least 2 sides of every story. If you hear only one side, you are half deaf. And it is also true that in literature, just as in music, in storytelling, we and our children look to see ourselves, but also to see others, to experience other lives and experience our own. If a child cannot find herself or himself in a picture book, what image does that child have of herself or himself? When I grew up, there were no really good books that dealt with Native people, that dealt with American Indians, just as there were also no really good books that dealt with African Americans or Asian Americans. Oh yeah, we had Little Black Sambo. We had the 5 or 6 or 7 Chinese brothers, who knows how many there were. We had caricatures. We had pictures which were not realistic. And it is only when people begin to write about their own communities from their own experience that we begin to have the children's literature that truly reflects those realities. That's not to say that you have to be from one of those communities to write well about that community. If you are willing to really listen and really look and learn over a long period of time, you may be able to do that. But to have a literature that is dominated by people who come from one perspective means that you are always going to see a narrow tunnel vision of life itself. Our children do not live in the classroom. They live in the world. And this world we live in is a great circle. Like the breath that went through this flute and came out as song, it is shared by all of us. It is heard by all of us. Each of us in that circle has a perspective that is different from everyone else's, but we can all see the center. And if we look forward, we also can all see each other's faces in that circle. That's what literature does for us. It helps us see each other. It helps us hear each other's words, recognize each other's faces, see ourselves in others, but also see that everyone is not us, which is one of the great dangers of limiting literature, of limiting life. You know, kids learn by hearing, they learn by reading. If you want a young man, it's almost always a young man who doesn't read well, to become a better reader, all you have to do is read to him from books regularly. That's all you have to do. Every level of reading increases, every ability increases, except for spelling. That's how it works. A good friend of mine is John Cheska. And John and I talk a lot about the whole question of guys read and finding literature and finding material that will encourage people to become better readers. All the things we are trying to improve in our schools by testing can better be done in other ways. Everyone who knows anything about brain development, for example, knows that if you have ability in music and you increase your musical ability, your mathematical skills increase. It is directly related. Everyone who knows anything about history realizes that we learn history better when it is told in a story, rather than in numbers and names that are memorized out of context. What better stories do we have than a story that brings to life a time, a place, and a people in a memorable children's book? I became a writer for my own children. I told stories first to my kids and then began to write them down. So my children turned me into a children's writer. And when I write, I always keep in mind that kid I was who never saw himself. Poor, mixed blood, in a book. I never saw myself in a book. Although I saw lots of other people and learned from them and also still love them. I mean, I read every 3 or 4 years, I reread The Jungle Book, which is a very interesting cross-cultural story, I might add. Kipling had something there about being raised by wolves and being a poor Indian child who has been deserted by his own culture. We as human beings need each other. We need each other. There is a tradition within the Abenaki culture, and by the way, I think that bilingualism, trilingualism, multilingualism is deeply important. Whenever I write a book about any other cultural group, I spend a long time learning everything I can about that language and about those cultures and from the people themselves, not just from the internet. The internet is, I think Dickens would say, is an idiot. It has no mind. It's true. It doesn't have a mind. It only has the input of people who don't know often what they're talking about. So when you hear other people, when you hear other languages, you hear the world and see the world in a different way. I know just today we're riding over, the guy who drove us over in the van was from Togo. I lived in West Africa for a few years. So we were talking back and forth in Ewe. I sang him a song I'd learned in Ghana many years ago. You know, when you hear someone else's music, you also hear who they are. And you know, American music is more complicated than a lot of people think it is. I just want to mention one ethnic writer who's a very good friend of mine, Frank Chin, an incredible playwright. Frank also does country western music. And we were sitting around playing music together. He said, you know, people have said I sound like Charlie Pride. And Charlie Pride is the black Hank Williams. So I guess that makes me the yellow black Hank Williams. That's Frank Chin for you. So I wanted to share with you very briefly to have you hear another language. This is a book of poetry by myself and my son Jesse called Two Rivers, Nisnol Sibual, in Abenaki and English. Abenaki is one of the Algonquin languages of the Northeast. Very similar to the Powhatan language of our region here. A lot of our words are very much alike. And Jesse has been teaching the Abenaki language for over 15 years. And we've been writing things in the language together for a few years and doing a few small publications. This is called the Wind Eagle. I'll do it for you first in the Abenaki language. Wadzolsen, Ulomsen Nageso, Mila, Nasa, Kik, Ni tak wisabna, mziwi niona. The wind eagle gives breath to the earth, that breath which we all share. That breath which we all share. Ni tak wisabna, mziwi niona.
Well, it's too bad we are so afraid of languages. You know, the great news writer, the beginning of the 1900s, said that if English was good enough for Jesus Christ, it was good enough for us. That was A.T.L. Lincoln. And he had come back from a world tour. He said he couldn't, and remember now, I tell this, and some people don't get that satire, but he said if English was good enough for Jesus Christ, it's good enough for us.